Go down your cellar steps in August and stop about halfway. You'll feel where the air quits moving. It sits on your arms like a wet dish rag, and it's a few degrees cooler than upstairs, but it doesn't feel cooler, it feels heavier. That's the line. Up above it, the house breathes. Down below it, the air just stands there and works. Put a hygrometer on the shelf down there. One of those little dial gauges, $5, tells you the relative humidity in the room. And in a Tennessee summer, you'll watch that needle sit above 70% for weeks at a stretch. Not one bad afternoon. Weeks. And the whole time it sits there, the air is doing something to your things. Same thing happens in a closet on the north wall of the house. Same thing in a back bedroom nobody opens, and in a crawl space, and behind the boxes stacked against the outside wall of a spare room. Anywhere the air quits moving and the wall is cold, the damp settles in and stays. Now here's the part that gets me. Most folks answer that with a machine. You go buy a 50-pint electric dehumidifier, set it on the cellar floor, run a cord to it, and let it run 12 hours a day through the warm months and on into fall. That machine draws about $412 in electricity in a year. $412, and you still walk down those steps twice a week to carry the bucket up and pour it in the sink. You still hear the compressor kick on at 2 in the morning through the floor. And in about 4 years, the fan bearing goes or the coil ices up and quits, and you buy another one. So why are you paying every year for something my grandmother did for free with a shovel, a barrel, and a scrap pile? I'm Edna. I live up a hollow in East Tennessee, in the farmhouse my grandfather built. And I've got charcoal setting in the cellar and the closets of this house right now, in crocks and in old wooden trays with the bottoms drilled out. I'll show you how to burn it and how to set it. But first you need to know exactly what you're fighting down there, because if you think damp is just a smell, you'll never take it serious enough. Above 70% relative humidity, 4 things start going at once in the same closed room. Mold gets what it needs to grow. Dust mites multiply. They drink moisture straight out of the air through their skin, and below that line they dry up and die, and above it they don't. Wood decay fungus gets into the joists and the sill plate and starts eating the wood from the inside where you cannot see it. And metal corrodes, hinges, tool blades, the canning jar rings, the wire on a shelf bracket. One reading on one little dial, and 4 different things running at the same time in the dark. Folks think of them as 4 separate troubles. They're one trouble with 4 faces. And mold does not need standing water. That's what most folks get wrong. There's no leak, no puddle, nothing dripping, so they figure they're fine. Mold needs the humidity held above 50% and something to eat, and paper and cotton and pine board are all food. Once those conditions settle in, mold establishes on a surface in 24 to 48 hours, 2 days. A long weekend away from the house in July is enough time, but you won't see it. Not for a good while. The visible bloom, that black or green speckling on the wall, that comes later, after the colony has been working a while. What comes first is the smell. Active mold puts off gases while it grows. The inspectors call them microbial volatile organic compounds, which is a mouthful for the breath of the thing while it eats. Those gases come off before any spot shows on any board. And they don't just float. They soak into whatever cloth is stored nearby. The quilts, the winter coats, the box of linens, the mattress in the spare room. You know the smell. Wet socks, rotting wood, old books left in a basement, that soft Swedish paper smell when you open the cover. That's it. That's the gas. So when you open your cellar door and catch it, understand what you're smelling. That's not the smell of a damp room. That's the smell of something already living down there and already eating, and it got started 2 days after the air went still. Now take a piece of charcoal off the tray and look at what you have got in your hand. A stick of oak, burned right, comes out still looking like oak. You can count the grain lines. You can see where the ring of 1 year sits against the next. The bark is gone, the sap is gone, the color is gone, and what is left is black and light as nothing, and it snaps between 2 fingers with hardly any pressure at all. That is the whole trick of it. Heat drives out everything in wood that can leave. The water goes first, then the resins, then the gases that make the smoke and the flame you see coming off a green log in a fireplace. All of that boils away and travels off, and what stays behind is the carbon frame the tree built to hold its own weight. The shape holds. The stuff inside the shape is gone. So what is in there instead? Air. More than half of it, plainly. Somewhere between 58 and 62% of a good piece of charcoal is open space. Every one of those little tubes the tree used to move water up from its roots is still standing, still running end to end, only now they are empty, and their walls are burned clean. And every one of those walls has smaller holes in it, and those have smaller ones yet, which gives you a number most folks would not believe. 1 gram of charcoal, that is a chunk about the size of a hickory nut, carries as much as 88.5 square meters of surface inside it. Down at the low end, it is still 70.7. Call it the floor of a good-sized room, folded up small enough to sit in your palm. And all that surface is exposed. Air moves through the channels and touches every bit of it. Now here's the part that makes it worth setting in a cellar. Water vapor in the air lands on that surface and sticks there, and how much sticks depends on how wet the air is. In air at 100% humidity, charcoal will hold 15.88% of its own weight in water it has pulled out of the room. Drop that air to 80% and the charcoal only holds 7.53%. Read that the right way round. It works hardest when the air is worst. The nastier the room, the more it takes. A closed closet in July, a cellar with a damp line on the steps, a back room nobody opens from October to April. That is the air it was made for. And it does not ask for a plug, a switch, or a soul to come down and empty a bucket. So now I will tell you how I make it, because you cannot buy this stuff at the store in any form worth having. Out back of the shed I keep 2 things. A steel drum, the big kind, 40-gallon or 55, either one does. And inside it, a metal can, 5-gallon or 10. The can is the crucible. That is the pot the wood cooks in. The drum is the kiln, and its whole job is to hold a fire around the outside of that can and never let the fire get in. That is the trick of the whole business. The wood does not burn. The wood cooks. Take the lid of your can and drill 1 hole in it, 1/2 inch across. 1 hole, no more. When wood heats up, everything in it that is not carbon has to leave. The water, the resins, the gases, and it comes out as vapor, and it needs a door. 1/2 inch hole is that door. It lets the gas out, and it does not let much air in, and air is the thing that would set your wood on fire and leave you a can of ash. Then take the drum and drill 20 holes around the bottom of it, 1/2 inch, spaced even all the way around. Those feed the fire underneath. That is the only air anything in this rig gets. Cut your hardwood to about 4 inches. Oak, hickory, maple, apple, if a tree came down. Any hardwood scrap out of the wood pile or off the sawhorse. Pack that can tight, right up to the lid, jammed in, and if you can shake it and hear it rattle, you have not packed it tight enough. Why does tight matter? Because whatever open space you leave in there holds air, and air lets pieces catch and burn instead of carbonize. Less room inside, cleaner charcoal. Lid on. Can down in the drum. Wood and kindling packed around the outside of it, in the drum, not in the can. Light your fire and let it go. Now you wait. 2 hours, maybe 3, depending on your wood and how wet the day is. You will see white steam coming out of that 1/2 inch hole first. That is the water leaving. Then the smoke turns yellowish and greasy looking and it smells sharp, and that is the resins and the tars cooking out. And then it happens. A little flame stands up on top of that hole. Small, no bigger than a candle, blue at the bottom and orange at the tip. That flame is the gas off your own wood, catching from the fire below. From that minute on, you do not add 1 stick of fuel to the drum. The retort is running on itself. The wood is cooking itself with what is boiling out of it. You stand there with your hands in your pockets and watch a can feed its own fire. You will get about 20 pounds of charcoal out of 1 drum. No cord, no plug, no filter, no cartridge, no bag to throw in the trash when the burn is done and buy another. When that flame goes out and the drum cools, what you have is 20 pounds of the thing itself, and the only thing it cost you was scrap wood and an afternoon. Let it burn down. Do not open that can hot. Next morning that can is cool enough to handle, and you lift the lid off and there sits your wood, still in the shape you cut it, only black clear through. Pick a piece up and it weighs about nothing. That is what surprises folks the first time. A stick of oak that took 2 hands out of the woodpile now sits in your palm like a scrap of burnt paper. Take that piece in both hands and snap it. It breaks. Wood bends before it breaks and fights you a little. This does not. It gives right along the grain with a dry little crack, and the broken faces come out shiny black, almost like coal. All the sap and resin and pitch that made wood limber went up the vent hole as smoke. What is left is the frame, and the frame is brittle. That brittleness is a gift, because you have got to break it up. I lay mine on a flat stone out by the shed and put an old dish towel over the pile and go after it with a hammer. The cloth keeps the pieces from skittering off across the yard and keeps the black dust down out of your face. You want walnut-sized chunks or smaller, not powder, not fist-sized blocks either. A fist-sized block has most of its surface locked up inside where the air never touches it. Break it to walnut size and all those broken faces are now standing open to the room. Same pounds of charcoal, more of it working. You will end up with fine dust in the bottom, no matter how gentle you are. Do not sweep it out. I run the whole business through an old flour sifter, and the dust that falls through goes into a square of muslin tied off at the corners like a little sack. That sack is what goes in the places a tray will not fit, behind a chest of drawers, in the toe of a boot in the hall closet, under the bottom shelf where the canning jars sit. The chunks go in anything that will let air move across them. A coffee can with a dozen holes punched in the lid with a nail. A clay crock with a piece of cheesecloth stretched over the mouth and a string around the neck. A wooden tray with a half-inch of daylight between the slats. I have got both crocks and drilled trays going in this house right now, and one is not better than the other. Here is the part most folks get wrong, and it is the only way to ruin the whole thing. Do not put your charcoal in a jar with the lid screwed down. Do not seal it in a plastic tub and snap the corners shut. Why does that kill it? Because damp air has to reach the charcoal for the charcoal to take it, and it has to keep reaching it. Seal the lid and you have trapped what it already pulled inside the container with it, and you have shut the door on everything else. It sits there full and does nothing. A sealed jar of charcoal is a jar of black rocks. Punched tin, cloth over a crock, gaps between slats. The one requirement is that air gets to the surface. Now where they go. Cold air sinks. It settles down the walls and pools along the floor, and it holds its water hardest right down there where it is coldest and stillest. So that is where the trays go. Low on the cellar wall, not up on the joists. On the floor against an outside wall, not in the middle of the room. Back in the corners where nothing stirs and the air just sits. You put the charcoal where the damp lives. Now how do you know when it is full? The charcoal will not tell you by looking. That is the first thing to get straight. It goes into the crock black and it comes out black, and there is no line on it, no color creeping up the side, nothing that darkens or pales. A piece that has been working 4 months in a wet cellar looks exactly like a piece you set out yesterday. So do not stand there squinting at it. Your nose is the gauge. Walk down those steps of a morning before you have opened anything, and just stand there and breathe. When the charcoal is doing its work, that cellar smells like nothing, like cold stone and not much else. When it fills up, the old smell comes back, that flat sour dampness, the one it had been eating for you all along. That is the whole signal. The smell it was pulling returns to the room. If you pick up a piece in the wettest part of August, it will feel a little heavier in your hand than it did, faintly, enough that you might talk yourself into it either way. I do not trust that, and neither should you. Trust the smell. So you gather them up and you carry them out into the sun. Spread them in a single layer, not heaped in the crock, not piled in the tray, one layer, pieces not touching if you can manage it, on whatever flat thing you have. I use an old screen door laid across 2 sawhorses. A sheet of tin does fine. A porch rail, a flat rock, the hood of a truck that is not going anywhere. What matters is that no shade falls across it. Not tree shade, not the shadow of the house creeping over at 4 o'clock. And the hour matters. 10 in the morning to 2 in the afternoon. That is the window where the sun sits high enough to do the work. 2 hours out there brings back 85 to 90% of what those pores let go of. The heat drives the water back out of all those little tunnels and off it goes into the open air, and the charcoal comes back nearly as hungry as it was. Now here is where folks overdo it. They figure if 2 hours is good, all day is better. So they set it out at breakfast and fetch it in at supper. 4 hours gains you nothing, not one bit more capacity than you had at 2. And past that, you are not helping it. You are starting to break the material down. The pieces get crumbly at the edges and you lose them to dust sooner than you ought to. The useful work finishes at 2. Bring it in. You are probably wondering why the sun cannot get you the whole 100% back. Because a few things are lodged in there that sunshine will never reach. Heavy odors, oils, some of what the wood itself left behind. To scour those out completely, you need 600 to 900 degrees Celsius with no oxygen in the chamber. which is to say you need the drum and the can again, the same fire that made it. The sun is not a retort, but 85 to 90% is plenty for a closet floor or cellar corner. And the charcoal goes right back into the crock that same afternoon, still warm, and starts pulling again. Do that every 30 to 60 days, and one batch will serve you 18 to 24 months. Then the pores quit clearing. You sun it and the smell comes back in a week. When it gets there, put it in the stove and burn it. It is good fuel. Char yourself a fresh batch off the next pile of scrap. Go down the aisle at the hardware store and you will find a white plastic tub with a bag inside it, damp red. What is in that bag is calcium chloride crystals, a salt that pulls water out of the air and turns to liquid doing it. The liquid drips down into the bottom of the tub and sits there, and you look at it through the plastic and you can see how full it is. It works. I am not going to stand here and tell you it does not. But look at what it is. A 15.5-ounce bag will collect up to 1 quart of liquid, and when it has collected that quart, it is finished. The crystals are gone. They dissolved into the water they caught. You pour it out, you throw the bag away, and you go buy another one. There is no recharging a salt that has turned to brine. The sun will not bring it back. That product got bought by W.M. Barr on the 30th of September 2003. It sits on the shelf year after year because it has to be replaced. And a thing that has to be replaced is a good thing to own if you are the one selling it. Now the machine. A 50-pint electric dehumidifier running 12 hours a day costs about $412 a year in electricity at the average rate folks pay, 16 cents a kilowatt hour. That is the power alone. That is not the price of the machine, and it is not the bucket you carry up the steps. And that rate is the average. In Hawaii, where power runs 41 cents a kilowatt hour, that same machine cost $147.71 a month. A month. For a box that hums in a back room and pulls water out of the air. The whole dehumidifier trade was worth somewhere between $3.2 and $4 billion in 2024, and it is headed for $5.12 billion by 2030. Every dollar of that runs through an outlet in somebody's wall. Why does the hardware store carry those two things and not this? There is no money in teaching a person to char a bucket of oak scraps. You do it once and you are done buying. There is reliable money in a machine that needs your outlet and a bag you throw out when it fills. And so one of those sits on every shelf in the country, and the other one does not sit anywhere at all. That is the whole of it. It is not a mystery, and it is not a conspiracy. It is just what sells. The poor structure that does this work needs no patent. It needs no factory, and no cord, and no receipt. It is hardwood scraps and one burn and a crock with a crack in the side that you are going to throw out anyway. My grandmother kept hers in a brown crock on the cellar shelf with a chip out of the rim, and it sat there through summers hotter than this one, and nobody ever paid a cent for what it did. We are not smarter than the people selling the machine. We just have wood, and they do not sell wood. So here is what you do. Go out to the shed, or the wood pile, or the pile of trimmings behind the barn where the oak and hickory ends go when a job is finished. Pick up the first scrap piece of hardwood you put your hand on. Look at it. That piece, and the 20 pounds of pieces behind it, is a cellar that quit smelling like a cellar, and a closet where the shoes do not go green, and a back room you can shut the door on in August without dreading what you will find in October. Pick it up. That is where this starts, and that is where the paying stops. Tell me in the comments what spot in your place gives you the most trouble with damp and smell every year. A closet, a cellar, a crawl space, or some back room you keep fighting? That is how the old folks did it. That is how it is still done in any home that remembers.